Olishisa Mandela, or better known as Nelson Mandela, was born July in 1980 and died December 5, 2013. Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary politician and philanthropist. He was born in the village of Sivu in Utata, back then a part of South Africa's Cape Province. He was given the forename Olishisa, a term Kulikuli, meaning troublemaker, and the name suited him, as we'll know more about later. In later years, he became known by his clan name Madiba. Mandela grew up with his two sisters in his mother's village, Nu, where he tended cattle farming as the village cattle boy. He had spent much time outside with other boys. Later, his mother sent him to a local Memphis school in the age of 7. His teacher gave Mandela the British forename Nelson. Every African child attending school had to have a British name if they lived in British colonies. His mother took him to the great place of Metuka, where they started to go to church. As Mandela attended church every Sunday, Christianity became a significant part of his life.
Nelson Mandela's commitment to politics and the ANC grew stronger after the 1948 election victory of the Afrikaner-dominated National Party, which introduced a formal system of racial classification and segregation, also known as apartheid, that restricted non-whites' basic rights and barred them from government while maintaining white minority rule. The following year, the ANC adopted the ANCYL's plan to achieve full citizenship for all South Africans through boycotts, strikes, civil disobedience and other non-violent methods. Mandela helped lead the ANC's 1952 campaign for the defiance of unjust laws, traveling across the country to organize protests against discriminatory policies, and promoted the manifesto known as the Freedom Charter, ratified by the Congress of the People in 1955. Also, in 1952, Mandela and Tambo opened South Africa's first black law firm, which offered free or low-cost legal counsel to those affected by apartheid legislation.
Mandela was a South African nationalist, an ideal position he held since joining the ANC, also being a Democrat socialist and thereby being openly opposed to capitalism. Marxism influenced Mandela, and during the revolution he advocated scientific socialism. During the prison trial he denied being a communist, although later historians and biographers believed that this was a lie. Biographer David Jones Smith stated that Mandela embraced communism in the late 1950s and early 60s, while historian Stephen Ellis found evidence that he had been an active member of the South African Communist Party, SACP. This was confirmed after his death by the SACP and the ANC. According to the SACP, he was not only a member of the party but also served on the party's central committee. Mandela believed gold mines and land and other necessaries had to have an equal distribution of wealth. He called it nationalism, which China embraced. For example, Mandela began to quote Deng Xiaoping, "It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." Mandela had several speeches around the world. Most of the speeches was about inclusivity, accountability and freedom. He was driven by the belief of human rights, pursuing not only racial equality but also promoting gay rights as a part of the post-apartheid reforms.
Nelson Mandela was arrested the 5th of August 1962 when he was 44 years old. He was arrested because he stood up against the white government. Besides that, he had been a wanted man for a very long time because of several crimes he had committed previously. The crimes he committed were only in order of the black people's rights. The first couple of years were naturally the most difficult, especially because Mandela and Winnie Madikizela married only 4 years earlier. Mandela remained strong-willed, stating, "It is only my flesh and bones that are shut up behind these tight walls. Otherwise I remain cosmopolitan in my outlook. In my thoughts I am free as a falcon." In 1963, Mandela and 9 others appear in court charged for sabotage, which is known as the Rivonia trial, where he pleads not guilty. Even though Mandela pleads not guilty, there was still a risk for him to be sentenced to death. This is when Mandela delivers his famous speech, called the Prepared to Die speech.
I have fought. against white domination. And I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Because of this speech, Mandela avoided death sentence, but he was still sentenced to life. This is another great example of how strong-willed Mandela was, and that he was even prepared to die for the rights of the black people. As the years passed by in prison, Mandela found it harder and harder to remain focused. And it certainly didn't help when his eldest son passed away in a car accident. Even though it was Mandela's firstborn son, he was not allowed to attend the funeral. Mandela described it like this: "Suddenly my heart seemed to have stopped beating, and the warm blood that had freely flown in my veins for the last 51 years froze into ice. For some time I could neither think nor talk, and my strength appeared to be draining out." In 1985, Mandela got an offer to be released as long as he renounced violence. Mandela rejected the offer and said, "I cannot and will not give any undertaking at a time when I and you, the people, are not free. Your freedom and mine cannot be separated. I will return." The 11th of February 1990, Mandela was finally released after 27 years of prison, and the happiness was huge all over South Africa.
After attaining his freedom, Nelson Mandela led the ANC in its negotiation with the governing National Party and various other South African political organizations for an end to apartheid and establishment of a multiracial government. Though fraught with tension and conducted against a backdrop of political instability, the talks earned Mandela and de Klerk the Nobel Peace Prize in December 1993. On April 26, 1994, more than 22 million South Africans turned out to cast ballots in the first multiracial parliamentary elections in the history of South Africa. An overwhelming majority chose the ANC to lead the country. And on May the 10th, Mandela was sworn in as the first black president of South Africa, with de Klerk serving as his first deputy. Improving race relations, discouraging blacks from retaliating against the white minority, and building a new international image of the united South Africa was central to President Mandela's agenda. To those ends, he formed a multiracial government of national unity and proclaimed the country a rainbow nation at peace with itself and the world. In a gesture seen as a major step toward reconciliation, he encouraged blacks and whites alike to rally around the predominantly African national rugby team when South Africa hosted the 1995 Rugby World Cup. In 1999, he retired from politics.
Nelson Mandela has made a huge impression. In South Africa, he was considered the father of the nation and the founding father of democracy. Mandela earned international acclaim for his activism in overcoming apartheid and fostering racial reconciliation. Many people see Mandela as a savior because he overcame apartheid and racism almost single-handedly, but Mandela was also viewed as a terrorist in some people's eyes. This is because he was very violent, and he also was a friend with dictators like Fidel Castro and Muammar Gaddafi, which is very ironic as there are no equal rights between them and their people, and it was exactly equal rights Mandela fought for. Even though Mandela has been criticized for being violent, he has still received a huge amount of rewards for creating peace. Besides that, many people has also honored Mandela by making, for example, statues, remembrance days, movies, and songs written by well-known artists such as Nickelback. By the time of his death, Mandela was seen as the national liberator, the savior, and he was even commended to be Washington and Lincoln rolled into one. Mandela's biographer, Anthony Sampson, said that even during Mandela's life, a myth had developed around him that turned him into a secular saint, and which was so powerful that it blurs the realities. Within a decade after the end of Mandela's presidency, Mandela's era was being rightly thought of as a golden age of hope and harmony. Across the world, Mandela was viewed as a moral authority with a great concern for the truth.